Hi again then guys, and welcome to yet another specific breakdown of another car from, of course, the most recent car pack, and this is one which a lot of people wanted to return to the game, one which I'm certainly happy to see back, and also one which I'm not surprised. It's one of those cars which you think, well, yeah, of course they added this one, just like the FD, the R32, R34, the Supra. It's not going to surprise anyone that those cars have come back, but at the same time, it is very nice to see them back. They are cars which have been long-standing in the franchise, they're some of the best JDM cars you can get, they're legends for a reason. It's not just resting on its laurels, they are still competitive cars, even to this day. Now, of course, this one in particular is a pop culture icon as well for a couple of reasons, initial D being one of them, the FC RX-7. And one of the things that I've always liked the most about the FC in particular is that although, from what I've heard, there are, I think, some variations of the other RX-7s, the FD in particular, which could be fitted with 4 seats. I'm not certain on that, but I heard that that was the case. With the FC, on the other hand, this one is much more adept at being a 2+2, with the very small bench rear seat that you can have in the car. You can see it by looking behind in cockpit view, and incidentally, there's no cockpit view in this video. Unfortunately, I forgot to record that this time, and by the time I'd done it, I didn't save the replay. So I wanted to get the video out, I didn't want to have to push it back anymore, so just on this occasion, I've had to drop that part of it due to simply forgetting. Now, this RX-7 is in a way the same as all other RX-7s, and that is, it's a great car. Because all RX-7s of any generation are really good, be it road cars, drift cars, race cars, pre-tuned, stock, whatever the case may be, they give you a lot to work with. And of course, a lot of JDM cars do, but some of them are definitely more specialised and have more of an advantage in a certain way. Now, one of the things that initially really stuck out to me about this FC in Gran Turismo Sport in particular, because of course we already had a premium FC RX-7 on Gran Turismo 6 as well, which as well was a great car, but this one, due to the new N-Class system, actually has a pretty nice little advantage, and it's one which not many of the other JDM cars currently have, not the ones that we have in the game at the moment at least, and that is that because of the fact that this one has quite a lot less power than, say, the GTRs or the Supra, or most of the others in fact, even the other RX-7, you can detune this one to N100. That is a very useful thing to be able to do. Now, you might not end up using that much. Balance of performance, for instance, won't let you 9 times out of 10, but in custom lobbies, in custom races, even from the home menu, you could definitely put that to use. Because a car like this, and I've said this before, it's one of the great things about a rotary engine, and it's something which rotaries share in common with gas turbines and electric motors, is that unlike a traditional piston engine, or most traditional piston engines at least, the power and the torque are deceptive, because although they may not sound quite as impressive as, for instance, the FD or a Supra or a Skyline, even its equivalent rivals of the time, the performance which a rotary engine can give you will often go beyond the raw spec. So even though, yes, it has only 203 horsepower to begin with and 199 pound-feet of torque, what it can do with that goes way beyond that. There are very few other cars in the game which you could detune to around 200 horsepower but still get over 150 miles per hour out of it. As you can see, you can do that in this one. Now, I have upgraded this one a little bit just by increasing the slider, basically. I haven't actually increased the upgrade level at all. It's still N200, but it's running about 240 horsepower instead of 203, so not a massive difference. But the weight is already nice and low. It's 1,250 kilos. That's similar to certain GT class race cars. And of course, for any production car to be even remotely close to a race car of any kind is quite impressive. Now, the horsepower per tonne doesn't sound amazing. It's 162, because of course that's still 250 kilos over a metric tonne with only just over 200 horsepower to work with. So it makes sense that the horsepower per tonne isn't insane, but that's still quite easily a rival to any other car with that kind of power level. Most hot hatches, for instance, will have a little bit of a weight advantage, but the funny thing is most modern hot hatches actually don't have quite as much of an advantage in that regard as you might think. because some modern hot hatches are heavier than they look, whereas a car like this, and this is something which Japan has always done very well, they make cars which are a decent size, but especially in the case of something like an RX-7, can be a lot lighter than they look, and that also applies to the WRX and the Evo. They also have that advantage, they're a lot lighter than, say, the American or Euro equivalents of a car like that. Your typical sedan, for instance, or your typical rear-wheel drive sports car is nowhere near as light as an RX-7 is. Now, this one doesn't have the sheer power, even when tuned, that an FD would have, and it's not as quick as one. But of course not, you don't expect it to be. It's a different type of machine. It comes from a different era, it's got the pop-up headlights in a much more boxy, old-school way, whereas you could argue, pretty strongly actually, that the FD was sort of like the official end of the line for pop-up headlights. There might have been one or two cars that had that after, but not really. The FD-RX-7 around 2002, I believe, is when production ended with the Spirit R, was it? Or the Bathurst? I think it was the Spirit R. That was pretty much one of the last pop-up headlight vehicles, and yet it still looked appropriate. It suited the car, and it didn't make it look old. This one as well very much looks its age. Of course, it's a boxy car, you can see it's older, but it still looks great, and that's why so many people love it. Now, this one is definitely tail-happy, as you'd expect an RX-7 to be, but it's very easy to control, even with slightly lower weight and slightly increased power, but still in N200 on sports tyres with no traction control. It's easy to drift, it's perfect for beginners. Don't necessarily hike the power right up if you're a beginner, purely because you don't need to, so I'd recommend not spending the mileage points because you just don't need to. You can drift it very easily, you can hold a drift, and as I said earlier, the performance easily goes beyond the numbers, so it will be faster than you expect it to be, especially for top speed. So overall, it's certainly a car that's worth looking into. It's pretty cheap as well, around, 25 grand or thereabouts. And of course, the category being N200, you can drop it to N100. I haven't fully tuned mine, but I should think you can probably get it up around, N4, maybe N500. I wouldn't be surprised if it could go that high. So you've got yourself a nice little basis to work from. It's one of the very few older school JDM cars in the game. The only real rival that I can think of would maybe be the older Supra, in the most direct sense, the boxy Supra, and then possibly the R32 Skyline, but not really, that's a little bit newer. So it doesn't have too many rivals, and of course the AE86 would be the perfect rival for it, for obvious reasons. So yeah, check out the car, definitely worth a look, and it's an icon for a reason. It's a great car, great drifter, great top-end speed for its power, certainly one to bear in mind for lower N-class racing in particular, and it's an excellent beginner's car because of how cheap it is. So that's it for this pick overall. Of course, I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.